What's up, everybody? Here's another one of my old school reviews. This time, Weird Science, written and directed by Hughes. The cast is pretty stacked. You got Anthony Michael Hall, you got Kelly LeBrock, you got Bill Paxton, you even have a very, very young Robert Downey Jr. This is definitely one of those movies I probably should not have watched when I was a kid. And revisiting it, there's a lot of it that just went over my head. There's so many of the jokes that were told, especially Bill Paxton's character, that I didn't understand at all. And now that seeing it as an adult, like maybe I should not have, but it was terrific fun even back then. I saw a recent interview with Anthony Michael Hall, who said that when he got the script by Hughes, one of the things that Hughes said was like, "This is my version of a comic book movie." Like the story itself is basically kind of a comic book, which is true because the original kind of idea for this movie was in a kind of Mad magazine type of publication back in the day in like the 50s or so, called Weird Science. The premise is basically these two nerds who are not very popular at their school. They only have each other, to support each other and be friends. They decide to create the perfect woman after a night of just kind of hanging out, and they're watching Frankenstein. And character of Wyatt is the one with the big fancy house and this big computer. Uses the computer program to make the perfect woman. And then, however you want to do it, some things go right, things go wrong, and Kelly LeBrock appears as more than just a program on a TV screen, but looking like a real person. And you really see how she helps them along the way to kind of be better versions of themselves, which is really, really interesting. She reminds me a lot of this archetype in storytelling known as the superior woman. She is the female character that brings the male protagonist, along to be the better version of himself. You see this throughout many of Tom Cruise's movies, like whether it's Top Gun, Cocktail, Days of Thunder, there's always that particular female counterpart, that, helps the male protagonist overcome their deficiencies, in essence. But there's so many instances in this movie that it's just crazy to think about. Everything from the sequence in which Kelly LeBrock's character Lisa is created. There's like windstorm from the computer, and then everything is a mess and things get destroyed. And then all of a sudden there she appears. And I still remember that scene of like the door breathing, it's like getting bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden it explodes. And then on the other side, with this kind of reddish pink light, Kelly LeBrock appears. And then the first words out of her mouth are like, "So, what do you maniacs want to do first?" There's filled with moments like that. I think the thing that I always appreciated, especially now as an adult watching it, is how she basically brings them to the better versions of themselves, kicking and screaming. Because at every moment, like, they don't want to do it because it's not in their comfort zone. They're used to being like, exiled nerds among themselves. But now it kind of climaxes with the house party at Wyatt's house. And so many people are there. Everyone is just enjoying and having a crazy time. And these crazy mutant bikers come in. Cameo by Vernon Wells, who was in Commando, and also kind of basically reprising his role from Road Warrior with Mel Gibson. And, he's bullying them, intimidating them, when out of nowhere, they just have that moment, where they man up, you can say, points a gun in his face and says, you can leave quietly or you can stay and die. you know. And even as a kid, I remember feeling like, "Whoa, this is so intense," you know. Then they finally do leave, and then when Wyatt yells at Gary about how like you got a gun, what is wrong with you? You know, it's dangerous, and then he just points it off to the side. It's like it's a squirt gun, and boom, it actually ends up being a real gun. So it was one of those, comedic moments to lighten the mood, the intensity of everything that just happened, and of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the late great Bill Paxton as Chet. One of those characters that if you grew up watching movies in the 80s, he just makes an indelible impression. And for my money, my personal opinion, because the reason why I watch this movie so much is because my brother recorded it. My brother's 8 years older than I am, so the things that he watched, I kind of watched, but should not have watched. And I remember every time he played this movie and I'm watching it with him, Chet scenes were the ones that he was laughing the most at. And then when I think back to the way our relationship was growing up, it seems like there was a lot of Chet that he wanted to act out, with his crazy haircut, those crazy lines. There's that scene after Lisa is created and Chet is in the kitchen eating something and Wyatt walks in and when he walks out, Chet says, I like your panties. And then he realizes what he just said and what his brother is wearing. And then after giving him a lecture, Chet is wearing a towel. And he says, for Christ's sake, will you cover yourself? And takes off the towel and gives to him and like he's naked. So it's ridiculous moments like that that I think make the movie just timeless and still funny, even though there are moments that are probably not appropriate these days to watch. But I still say it's one of John Hughes' best. I know everyone thinks of 16 Candles and Breakfast Club, but for my money, this one has everything it has to be the most entertaining. Anyways, what about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, give me a follow, and I'll see you guys next time.